Good morning. Hi, good morning. Last day, best day. So glad you guys are all here. Our next session is just about to start. I'd like to introduce our next presenters here at Corteva Agriscience. So if you could give them your full attention, we're going to be holding questions to the end so we can give a microphone to one of you guys so we can hear. So if you'll make a warm welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this year's Learning Lounge. My name is Benny Martinez. I'm the Corteva Market Development Specialist for the Southwest region. So I cover Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Louisiana, and Southern Arkansas. Certainly glad to be here with y'all today. We have a really cool Learning Lounge today. We kind of decided to change it up for this year. We've got some great panelists. We're going to be talking about forage production and pasture management. We've got some folks that are scattered across the country that have a long history in managing their pastures extremely well. And so they're going to be trading some secrets with you to hopefully help you understand maybe some of the tricks and trades of the things that maybe you can implement as a grass farmer, sometimes that we don't often refer ourselves to, but it is the foundation of cattle production. You know, we've got to raise as much pounds of grass to feed those cattle to ensure that we're delivering that pound of gain. You know, I was listening to a marketing report this morning, and I was thinking about the influence of that extra pound. You know, that pound is worth a lot more money today than it ever has been. So why not extract as much value as you can and grow that extra pound of grass to feed that cow and feed that calf to get that extra pound delivered to market. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a general introduction you've heard about me. I'm going to go ahead and pass it around to our panelists, and I'll go ahead and start on my left side and let these folks introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their operation, a little about where they're from, and a little bit about maybe how long they've been in the business. So Andrew, if you'll go ahead and kick us off.
Sure. Yeah, Andrew McCrae. I'm from Northwest Missouri. Maysville is my town. Our operation would stretch back to about 1910. That would be my great-great-grandfather. So I'm the fifth generation. Then I have a junior and senior in high school. Will be the next generation coming on. We are totally a stocker operation, so we have no cows. So we're buying calves about 400 to 500 pounds. We'll usually have them on pasture for about 5 months, and then we're selling them in load lots about 900 pounds. We sell them in Lamona, Iowa, and have done that since about the time I was born. So that's really what I've known. So work a lot on improving those pastures. We use a lot of stockpiled fescue through the winter. We never feed hay, so pastures are very important to what we do.
Great. John?
So I'm John Starnes. My wife and myself own Tennessee River Music, and we're up in the northeast corner of Alabama. So we're up in what we consider mountains. It's kind of the Trail of the Appalachian Mountains, and we are up on top of the mountain. So we run Hereford and Angus seed stock cattle. Our females sell first Saturday in May, and our bulls sell. We market bulls the last Monday in October. So we'd calve out close to 500 head of cows, and we're a little heavier on the Hereford side than as opposed to the Angus side, and we'll market a little over 100 bulls a year and about 150 females a year. My wife's family actually has been on that place, gosh, probably as long as Mr. Andrew's been there, but we are the third generation there on the farm. My kids will be the fourth there.
Great, thank you. Roger?
Roger Callison here. I'm in south central Oklahoma. Ada, Oklahoma is where my wife and I ranch at. We've been there for about 25 years ranching. We got mainly a cow-calf operation, commercial type cows. We also do run some yearlings. We take our calves on to the feedlot. We market most everything through the feed yards. So we run registered bulls, mainly Angus and Charolais bulls on commercial black cows.
Great.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Yon from Yon Family Farms. My wife Lydia and I are first-generation cattle producers. We now own and operate Yon Family Farms with our 3 adult children and their families. We're in the west central part of South Carolina. We're a seed stock operation, primarily Angus and a few Sem-Angus and Ultra Blacks. Even feed some cattle there at home. And we're grass farmers. And to me, cattle is fun, but growing grass sometimes can be even funner.
Thank you. So I think you've got a flavor for our audience. As you can see, they're pretty diversified. They're scattered across multiple different soil types, different regions. We're probably going to see a variety of different challenges that they may be facing. Speaking of challenges, I think one of the things that we always are challenged with is competition for our forages. You know, whether we're in a drought or it's excessive moisture or maybe a weed infestation or maybe brush. Those are always challenges. I'm going to kind of open it up to anybody that on the panel here that wants to maybe describe how they manage their pastures, especially as it relates to scouting. What are some of the techniques that you've implemented? And maybe I'll go ahead and start on this side because I know Andrew, you're pretty intense about scouting. What do you implement to stay on top of things?
Well, on our farm, we still use horses to round up cattle. We're not a Western ranch by any means, but we are out on pasture quite a bit, and somebody's on horseback, and we still use a gator and so forth. But we probably need to do something that is more set in time, but we feel like we're getting a regular view of those pastures. And especially, you're always going to see where you feed because we feed in bunks and we're feeding every day, but to look at the back sides of those pastures, places you don't get. So we're pretty intentional about getting out there, especially as we move from this time of year into early spring to see what is there and then have a good idea of keeping weed control as we move into May and June when we see a lot of flush of ragweed, thistle, that sort of thing, trying to keep an eye on that, but try to be very consistent in making it to those pastures very regularly on horseback or gator to view what we've got.
Yeah. What's your stance on timing? What do you try to shoot for, and in your regiment as far as scouting for your application?
As far as how often we are going or when we're going?
Yeah, if you see that you're maybe in need of an application of a herbicide, what are you actually trying to shoot for in terms of timing to control your targeted pests?
Well, we've done it. Yeah, sure, we've done it long enough and using some of the Corteva products that we kind of have our timing down. And we are also crop farmers, so we have corn and soybeans, and we do all of our own spraying. So unfortunately, it's just the way it works. Some of our spraying is dependent upon when the crop spraying is done because it's really hard to do things in between. And as great as Nova Graze is, you really don't want to kill the soybeans. So we try to get through all the corn and soybeans first and then get to that. But I will say this, if we see a problem and it's just a strange year, we can hire somebody to come in and do that, and will. And so we've done that before. But a lot of our timing is going, as far as application of any herbicide, is going to be later May, early June, and usually that timing works all right in our geography.
Yep. Great. Anybody else have a?
Well, I was just going to kind of go on with what Mr. Andrews said. I think maybe scouting in terms of there's times that we deliberately go scout, such as summer and hay fields on sorghum for aphids, armyworms, like we're all familiar with. But in terms of weed pests and stuff, we're out there every day in the cattle drive and checking the cattle. In turn, we're checking pasture for that. So this time of year, depending on weather, sure, we're getting a few thistle pop up here and there, but also it's kind of hard to beat Mother Nature. So you got to have the right conditions so we can take care of it. And a lot of times we do a lot of winter annual planting and ryegrasses and triticale. So a lot of times maybe that first application, when we do the ultigraze, so we will inoculate or impregnate the fertilizer with Duracor. We've done that 2 years now. So a lot of times that first application will be when we come in and give, the second round of fertilizer for that spring crop.
Okay.
Yeah, we're about the same. I mean, in southern Oklahoma, we start turning green usually in the middle of March to the end of March, and that's when you'll start seeing your weeds come up. We scout in March and April, and we usually spray in May and June. So that's kind of our scouting application.
I think that was covered pretty good, but I think the takeaway is be intentional. Get off that four-wheeler, get down off that horse, get out of that truck, and let your shadows grace those pastures every day if you can.
Yep. All great input. I think a couple points that I want to go ahead and introduce into this topic specifically. We talked a little bit about ultigraze. Ultigraze is a process where we have set up ultigraze dealers, certified dealers that have been trained to apply the herbicide onto their fertilizer prills. The benefit is that you don't feed weeds in fertilizing. You do the weed control all at the same time. And so that is something that's available. It's not a very new concept. We actually implemented it we started probably doing it maybe about 10 years ago, and we've had a lot of success out of that particular approach. The key is timing, though. I think I reflect back on some studies that were done at multiple universities where they actually tested the influence of your herbicide applications and what the influence is on forage production. And they found a very strong correlation of forage production when it's done in a timely manner, before the weeds compete against your grass, especially when your grass starts setting itself up for the season. You know, back in the row crop days, when I actually started in the row crop business, you know, they talked a lot about the first 50 to 60 days of a crop's life really dictates the yield. And so for cotton, for example, you think about 50 days after cotton gets planted and it doesn't even have a boll on it, but it's already determined its yield. Grass is actually very similar. And the reason why is it's really setting the foundation. It's setting some good roots. It's allowed to compete early, doesn't have that competition that's going to suppress it. Because once grass gets suppressed, it's kind of behind the eight ball. So I think that's a really important key point that I think is worth a discussion or worth a thought here. So another thing that I want to talk about, since we did briefly talk about ultigraze, let's talk a little bit about fertility. Let's talk about maybe some key practices that y'all feel maybe are important as it relates to when you do consider implementing a fertility program. What are some of the key thoughts in your approach?
Well, we are soil sampling every pasture every 4 years, and so we're very intentional about that. I think lime is really critical. We don't think about lime a lot, but we'll lime those pastures and then try to supplement where we need to on fertility. We have used ultigraze, and have found that to be good in certain places. We've even flown some on with an airplane in some places where it's difficult for us to get with a ground rig to be able to do that. So, but I really do think, the fertility is important. As people have said, you're growing a crop of grass. It's just like growing corn and soybeans. You wouldn't think about growing corn and soybeans without fertilizer and not doing soil tests, so you really have to with the pasture.
That's a great point. And
So I heard Mr. Kevin say that years ago. Like we're all cattle farmers, but number one, we're grass farmers first. I mean, if you don't take care of the grass and don't leave something behind, and when you move off of it, it's really, really hard to catch up because we don't ever know. The weather's so volatile too. We don't know what we're going to do, and particularly where we are, our subsoil would be very, very minimal up on top of the mountain. I mean, some of the pasture, like we can always tell before we get in trouble if it's in the summertime and drought, because you can go out and you can see rock outcrops in the pasture, and it just nearly looks like you went out there and sprayed Roundup. And that, I guess, just being the 90-degree days and 100-degree days, heating up that rock, I mean, it just absolutely smokes that root system. So we're the same way, soil sampling, and we do a lot of the grid sampling with our co-ops, and it's fascinating. It's actually saved us quite a bit of money because where we are with that lime, like little shell rock, we assume with 25 acres, it all needs the same nutrients, whether we've cut it for baleage, cut it for hay, or it's pasture ground. But it's amazing how, I'm talking about from here to that sign, we'll need a ton of lime here an acre, and that won't need but 500 pounds. And I don't, that's way above my head, but that's what it tells us, so that's kind of how we follow it.
that's great. That's great information. Any additional thoughts?
I mean, fertility is extremely important in southern Oklahoma. Of course, we can be dry. We can get dry at different times of the year. So I think when you fertilize is very important to us. We fertilize a lot of times in March and in April. That's when we use the NovaGraze, the Ultigraze as well. So it's very important.
I think with any management, fertility is no different, is using what we have. And in our particular area in the southeast, we have a lot of access to poultry manure. And that, can bring some additional challenges, but I can tell you that grass sure likes those nutrients as well. But I see some extension folks in the audience. It hadn't changed in 100 years. We know we need to pull those samples, and the better job we do it, like John with grid sampling, the better we'll do.
Yeah.
Again, it takes intentional.
Absolutely. So I think an additional thought that I have around soil testing is I kind of create this analogy related to a vehicle. When you have land, it's no different than a vehicle. It has to be maintained in a certain way. If something's not right, if it's not functioning at its proper capacity or its normal capacity, right? Your vehicle's having problems, whatever the case may be. You don't take it to the mechanic and the mechanic says, well, you know what? I don't know what's wrong, but I'm just going to add some oil to it. That's the same thing without doing fertility testing. When you don't know that maybe your pH there's an imbalance there, or maybe your cation exchange capacity doesn't have the ability to hold the amount of nitrogen that you're planning to apply, you're really losing money. You're losing an investment because you really don't know what your soil needs. And it's really critical. And in today's times, you got to be as efficient as possible. Even though the cattle market's good, you want to optimize your grass's ability to grow at its best potential. You want it to reach its genetic potential, and the only way that you're going to do that is to know exactly what it needs when it needs it. And so these are all great points. I appreciate that discussion. Let's jump a little bit. In my part of the world, we deal a lot with brush, and brush is pretty intense in our part of the world. Probably not so much in some of these other areas. But I do want to spend a little bit of time about and discussing about the approach that these individuals take from a brush management standpoint. So we'll go ahead and start with Andrew. Andrew, what do you do for brush control?
Well, we'll use remedy, and we just use an old-fashioned four-wheeler, go out, just spot spray. We try to do that enough that we don't have a big problem, so we can just go and scout it. But we even go as far as to mark it with our phones, and so if we see problems, then we've got that noted in our phone where we know to go back at some point and go spray that. But I think the key, a lot of us agree, it's just staying on top of it, because if you don't stay on top of it, then you got a big problem. So.
Yep, great point.
I'd say our brush would be much different than what Mr. Benny's used to, but maybe the encroaching privet hedge, on fence rows, etc. Late summer pigweed in the drought that weeds are hard to kill when it's droughty too, but the late summer pigweed and maybe some dog fennel here and there, but same deal. I mean, just some remedy load with some Duracore, what we've been smoking those with.
Yeah, brush is definitely a problem in our area too. We do the spot spray as Andrew talked about, but we'll use the remedy in our over the ground rigs, and we definitely have to stay on top of brush control, if not every year, every other year.
At our place, we have two areas of brush control. One has been our fence lines. We use a lot of high tensile electric fencing, and we all know that they don't work very well if we let those get covered in brush. So we spend a lot of time on a four-wheeler with a sprayer, and the good thing about that, any of us can do it. My 82-year-old mother-in-law spends all summer on her four-wheeler spot spraying weeds, and she just enjoys the hound of it. She's got a beautiful farm on account of it. The other thing that we have run into brush control on our farm, we've been converting some forest land that had been in pasture land 50 and 100 years ago, and the CRP program had taken it out of production, and now we're turning around and taking those acres and putting them back in grass. And as we've done that, we see some of those hardwood species are still wanting to make a go at it, so we've had to employ a brush control for those specific areas.
Great discussion. I actually did a demonstration trial. It was about 3 or 4 years ago, where I actually kept track of the population within each plot, the density of brush. In this case, it was actually mesquite. And I was interested to know what just a general weed control herbicide application and the influence on that on seedling plants would have from a long-term perspective. So this trial that I followed along, basically I didn't treat a certain area, and then I treated 3 different herbicides, just weed control herbicides across 3 different patches with the same density of population. And one of my desires was actually to understand what kind of control we can get on a seedling plant that's going to be a problem later on down the road with a broadcast application, especially where we have high densities. We are actually coming out of a drought. Anytime we have a drought, it's going to open it up to invasive species, and this was no doubt one of those situations. In the untreated, we actually had over 400 plants per acre of mesquite. These were little babies when I actually sprayed them, and in the sequential year when I did the ratings on the plots that I had sprayed, I actually reduced that down significantly. I reduced it down to about 50 plants per acre. That's pretty significant. So sometimes we don't think about maybe managing brush when they're in the seedling stage with a herbicide that's just a weed control herbicide. But if you have a good weed control herbicide, it really serves as a good opportunity, especially if we have some weeds, to go ahead and take care of our weed problem and at least help us get those pastures under control to a certain extent where they're manageable as a follow-up, just like Andrew said. If you keep on top of it, they're manageable and you can do it via IPT. We always promote IPT as the best solution for brush control because if you can manage that, it's not going to cost you nearly as much. I did the economics on this study and it was pretty significant. So the untreated, I actually did a broadcast application 2 years after application, and the cost savings was pretty significant by just implementing that weed control program, where I was actually able to knock out 2 birds with one stone. So it actually worked out really, really good for that demonstration. I think the other subject that I want to, and it doesn't have anything to do with weed control or pasture management, but succession planning. It's always something that is sometimes a subject that we don't often talk about. I had a long discussion with McFadden Ranch yesterday. We had the privilege of talking to them because they were one of the ESAP regional winners. And he was talking about his succession planning and some of the challenges that he's had over generations. Just want to open it up to discussion with the panelists. What are some of the strategies that you're using in your operation when you're thinking about succession planning, if you have a succession plan, and maybe just some thoughts there?
Well, I have my dad's an only child. I only have one sister. I only have 2 kids. So we don't have a lot of folks. We don't have a lot of extraneous cousins and so forth to work into this. But no, we've done a lot of planning. And, I have a junior and senior in high school. Both of them say they want to come back to the farm, which is great. Of course, they can do whatever they like. But we're pretty intentional about having those conversations, especially with my sister, and if put in place trusts and so forth to be able to do that. But I do think it's really valuable to have. You don't think about having a business meeting, and ours isn't that way, but we do make time to have those family, what I will say, business meetings to try to talk about, okay, here's what's going on the farm, make sure everybody's aware, because we do have some folks that are off farm, and then being very intentional about talking about, okay, what are the next steps, what do we see that we'd like to do in the future, and how can we have the new generation come in and do that. I appreciated my grandfather growing up who would always tell me, what do you see that we should do? And I've tried to take that approach with my kids, too, because he was always very good. And, he'd lived there for 95 years, 98 when he passed. But he was always saying, what do you see? And I think that's really important to do.
That's a great point.
So I'm in a little different boat here. My kids are 12 and 8. My father-in-law put this place together. And it's really unique because a lot of our main headquarters is what he grew up sharecropping with his family. But he put this farm together. We run about 3,500 acres. It's his. We run it. My wife has 2 siblings, but she's the only one that got the ag bug. So the farm is going to be hers to take on. The other 2 actually live here in Nashville. But the farm's going to be hers for what we want to do with it. Our kids both say they want to come back to it. And they're just going to fight it out to see who's going to be the boss, I guess. No, they're very good, and they like totally different things, and everybody's got kids know they're totally different. Like one's very hands-on, lots of common sense. The other one, we can't walk and chew bubble gum at the same time sometimes. But we've had that talk with their parents as well, and it is a hard conversation, I think, because I'm not going to call it a morbid conversation, but for lack of a better term, I guess you don't ever want to get caught with your pants down when you do have to make those changes and those changes to it. But a pie is still the same size. It's a lot of times when you start adding families and stuff to it, the pieces of the pie get awful small. So then you do have to get a little bit creative on how to sustain it for the next generations, to be profitable, to be able to make a living off of it. And Mr. Kevin's got 3 grown kids and a passel of grandkids, and I'm sure they're well on the way for this.
Well, my deal's a little different than his because I do have 3 children that are grown, and none of them have any interest in the ranch or work on the ranch. So I'm working on a succession plan that's pretty unknown right now. So we really don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, oftentimes we come to these meetings and we hear really good sessions on succession planning, and we say that's a great idea. And then we go home, and that's about as far as it gets. So it's not a fun subject. It's laborious, it's painful, it's very, very uncomfortable. But even though Lydia and I are just first generation farmers, our 3 grown children, we have started down that path. And it is it's not a quick journey. It's a marathon. And so my hope would everyone at least get started, knowing it's going to be hard, but please get started. I think that when I ask, and maybe this is a question later, but when I think of a real challenge for our industry is who's going to keep this going? And, maybe that it will be someone the same last name as you've got, but maybe it will be somebody in your situation that's got a different last name. And my family was sharecroppers. They didn't own anything, but they were actually bull customers that we sold bulls to, and they had been farming their farm for 250 years. The King of England had granted them the first 300 acres, and they were very successful. But there came a time where there was no one left that wanted to carry it on. So this particular family, some way, sold us the first 100 acres, and we must have did okay. And over a 30-year period, they have transitioned their farming operation to our family, and we carry a totally different name. So we're very indebted to this family. They never gave us anything, but they gave us opportunity, and they could have, looking back many times, sold it for way more money. But their legacy continues as ours is beginning.
Yeah, those are all great points. I was telling you earlier about my discussion with McFadden Ranch, and one of the things that was surprising to me, the current manager, current owner, got out of college and went to work for another ranch, and never knew that his dad really wanted him to come back to the ranch until he finally called. And he called and he says, "Hey, I think I'd really like for you to come back." And that was the start for him that led him back home, and now he's fostering his son to take over the ranch, and it's just like Kevin said, it's oftentimes a hard discussion to have. Nobody wants to think about that, but it's going to happen sooner or later, and certainly it's something that you've got to plan for. And the earlier that you plan, no different than anything else that you manage. The sooner that you plan for it, the more successful that you're going to be. So I appreciate all that feedback. We'll switch gears and we'll talk a little bit about the way we manage our ground and what it means to be sustainable. So we're privileged to have Kevin with us. Kevin is actually a former recipient of the Environmental Stewardship Award. And so I will start with Kevin because I think he's got a lot of experience, a lot of background in environmental stewardship, being a past award winner. And so, Kevin, tell us maybe, it's been a while since you did receive that award, but maybe tell us some of the things that led you to that award, and maybe some of the things that have helped you promote it and progress even more with that subject.
You bet. That's been a long time ago. I was a young person. That was 15 or 20 years ago. But again, I would like to thank Corteva. At that time, I think it was Dow. It's been so long ago, and the other sponsoring agencies that support that. In our short career, that's been one of the most gratifying awards that we've ever been a part of, and it stands that way today. Our family is no different than these families, and is no different than any of you. Especially 15 or 20 years ago, we said, we're not ready for this. We've got so much more we want to do. We're just getting started. And we were just encouraged to go ahead and do it. And so you might feel like you're never ready for it, but I would encourage you to apply or encourage your neighbors, because I promise you, every one of you are wonderful stewards of your land, and it's your passion and it's your love, just like it's ours. And it's a labor of love. To me, it's nothing's more gratifying. Again, I love cattle, but I love the land, and I love conserving those God-given resources that we've been blessed with to be stewards of. So I encourage you to participate in that, and I promise you'll be have gratification.
Yeah, one of the things that I get to see a lot of country in my travels. And obviously I live in an area that maybe doesn't get nearly as much rain as some of the areas that we're talking about here. But I see a very strong influence in the way somebody treats their land and how they're stewarding their land and how it even responds when we finally do get a rain. I've seen it actually fence to fence where I know that we receive the same amount of rain. But when I see somebody that's maybe taking care of their pastures to a higher degree, the way that grass responds when we do get a rain is pretty dramatic. So although sometimes we think, what is the importance of being a steward of our land? Is it just to showcase that we can be good stewards? No, it actually boils down to a lot more than that. Because I think if we take care of the land, we're able to allow it to produce to its capacity. We're allowed to allow that water to infiltrate and make it down into the soil, which is important. When we receive a rain, we don't want it to run off and go into the creek. We want it to absorb into the soil and be available for that natural resource that we're trying to grow, so that we can be good forage producers. So it all ties in together really, really well. And I think that's one of the reasons why I feel really important. I'll open it up to see if anybody has any additional comments, about that subject.
Well, I think what Mr. Kevin and Mr. Benny said, we look ourselves as grass farmers, cattle producers, but I always thought, and we don't do any row cropping. What we grow, we put up in high moisture hay. We do, sorghum Sudans in the summer, lots of winter annuals that we graze and also harvest for high moisture hay and baleage. But I always thought the row crop guys, as far as timing and application, spraying, fertilizing, had it figured out. And so we tried to be more deliberate like them, instead of just, it's part of it, we got to do it. But I think, like what Mr. Kevin them said, we have an on-farm meat market as well, and it's right there in the heart of the farm. It's actually an old gazebo that was our farm office, but we way outgrew that for our farm office, so we made it into a meat market. It's right in the middle. People in town, come out and buy meat there, and they've begged us to move to town, brick and mortar, and sure, we'd have more traffic, probably foot traffic, but we don't have a problem with that right now. We want to get them out to the farm, and I think there's maybe a sense of accomplishment. We can get them out there. We take care of the land, but we would do it whether people were coming out or not, and I think it maybe just gives you a little more market validity on that aspect when they come out and see that you are taking care of the ground, and they're liable to see deer running around, liable to see turkeys. And me and Mr. Kevin had this conversation last night. Actually, there's supposed to be a huge decline in wild turkey population where we are, but they've not come out to the farm and count the numbers because, we're doing something right, whether they scratch through a little bit of the cow manure or what. But with that, like, we've got a little bit of quail coming back. Now, you don't see them all the time, but the deer and turkey population, it's just, we want it to be good for all, and that's what we try to do.
Those are great comments. There's actually a demonstration that I'll encourage you to go check out. It's available on YouTube. There's a variety of different people that have put on this demonstration. It's called the rain simulator. It actually simulates rain on different range environments. And it's an eye-opener because it really demonstrates the potential for soil erosion, but also water infiltration. And it's an eye-opener to me because a lot of people don't understand the amount of time that it takes to replace an inch of topsoil. In fact, just in your mind, guess if you had to guess what would it be to replace an inch of topsoil. Well, it's actually averaging around 300 years. It takes 300 years to replace an inch of topsoil, so you really cannot afford to lose that precious resource. You won't do it in your lifetime. Your kids won't do it in their lifetime. and your grandkids won't do it in their lifetime. So it's certainly a precious resource. And obviously, when we get a rain, like I said earlier, we want to retain that rain. So stewardship plays a great role, and that's a great demonstration. I encourage you to check that out. It's an eye opener to see that demonstration in play. We'll wrap it up with one more question, and then we'll open it up to maybe some questions from the audience if y'all have some questions for our panelist. The question is related to, maybe a younger generation, a newer person that's thinking about getting in the industry. What kind of advice would you give them, maybe for some of your key learnings as you got into the business? So maybe some of the things that you wouldn't do again, or maybe you would do again, but maybe share with the audience maybe some things that a new person that's just trying to get into the business would maybe keep in consideration.
Well, it may not be exciting, but I think sure and steady, just like the tortoise and the hare, sure and steady is important. Taking measured steps is important. But I would also say this, to kind of piggyback on the discussion we just had. What better time for a young person to come into this business in the sustainability discussion? I mean, we don't sell direct to consumer, but we have the technology now to take my story and attach it to that beef as it moves through the marketplace. Now, what percentage of people care about that? We could debate about that, but there's so much that can be done now. And my son and I, who's a senior in high school, talk about this all the time. There's so many unique things that a young person can do and identify things, and I feel like I'm an old guy now, to identify things in a beef market. If they want to do something niche, they can do that, and sure and steady in that. But if they want to come into an existing operation like what we have, sure and steady, but taking care of that technology and being able to tell that story and do the right thing, but communicate that with people, that excites me, and I think it's a great opportunity for another generation coming on.
Well, I still consider myself kind of a young guy. I'm just not quite 40 yet. But we've thought about this and talked about it sometimes, not just in this atmosphere, but other deals. What would you give advice to young people? And I'm going to say young people, I'm saying fresh out of college. Don't be afraid to ask. Like, you always hear that there's no dumb question. There's really not, because we all up here, most of you out there, take for granted, particularly some people that are super wet behind the ears on this ag deal, like they just really don't know, and we not intentionally, but we bypass a lot of the information that we take for granted just because we do it every day and don't think anything of it. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to get involved. If you got somebody next door, you think you want to do it. If you are still in school, go take an internship. I did an internship in the spring semester of my college. And thoroughly enjoyed it. I did carcass ultrasound work based out of southeast Iowa and Diagonal, Iowa, but went all over Dakotas, Oregon, because I thought I might want to do some embryo transfer work when I got out of school. Different parts of the industry, but same concept, particularly where I was, that you were going to have to spend a lot of nights in a hotel and out of a bag. And, I loved it. I saw a lot of the country. Decided that I probably wanted to be home more at night. I wanted to have a family one day and not be on the road as much. So I found out that wasn't the path I wanted to go down. And I grew up in the purebred Angus industry. Mr. Kevin's known me longer than I've known him. So my dad set that foundation, and he might have tried to push me away. He's like, son, you'll work your life to death. You'll work yourself to death. Work a lot for not a lot, but it's more than that. We all love it, or we wouldn't do it. But I'd say ask, and like, if anybody is close to us, we'll take on any volunteers we want, because I'm sure we're all in the same boat. We have enough help to get done what we need to get done, but we always could use more. So come out. I mean, go job shadow somebody. Go ride with them one day. Take a trip with them. Go to production sales or whatever you want to do. Just try to get involved.
That's great advice. Roger, would you have anything?
Well, I'm not as young as John here, but I agree with reiterate what these guys say. Start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. My wife and I, when we started, we leased a place and we bought 20 heifers, and now we have several hundred cows. So I mean, it just takes time. 30 years of growth, and I agree with what John said. Get involved. Come to these deals. Get involved with your local extension agent. Get involved with ag teachers. It's just get involved.
Isn't it nice to see so many young people that have been at an event just like this? I don't know how many of you have noticed that, but it's very refreshing to me to see the young people that are so interested in our business, and you just see their eyes just light up. And to me, that's positive. And normally we think of it young people, but we've also got to think about, maybe especially in this part of the world, they might not be young people. We have folks that's coming into the beef cattle industry that are, maybe this is their second career. They've done really well at another career, whether it be military and industry, and they've had this lifelong goal of owning a place and raising grass and cattle. So we can't forget about those folks too. But we're often asked that. We just love working with beginners, and have hosted a ton of interns, and I think many times they've taught us way more than we've ever taught them. And it is a lot of work to have them, but it's been very rewarding for us. But I kind of think of the P's. I mentioned that you need to have a plan. Number one, you got to be passionate about this industry. I don't think none of us or none of you do it for the money. It's a maybe it might not be the best way to make a living, but we'd all agree it's a wonderful way to live. You got to be persistent. There's nothing easy about this industry, nothing at all. We got to be patient. There's nothing quick. It's not quick, and it's not for the faint of heart. And you got to have a partner. And in this business, what other business are people so willing to share information? John and I are actually kind of competitors. We sell seed stock to some of the same place, but we talk all the time and compare notes, and he shares a lot of knowledge with me, and I learn. And there's people, all of you are willing to learn. So we're very blessed to be a part of a business where it's a sharing mentality. And I think it helps to have partners, whether that be your university, or we can depend on Corteva. They want us to succeed. Their success is based on our success and your success. So they don't want to sell us anything that's not going to work. And none of us, Lord knows, want to use anything that's just a waste of money. So I think partners are important. And for our family, it's been prayer. And having someone that you, whether that be of faith or a good partner or a good spouse, to me is very important.
All great points for sure. There's no doubt we're getting some valuable information here. I know we're running short on time, so just a couple quick announcements before we transition. We do have a series of webinars that are going to be playing here short, not too long. February 11th is actually our first one. We're actually going to be hosting a webinar that's going to be talking about grasping fertility, more grass, fewer weeds. It's going to be actually talking about that ulti-graze system approach, but it's also going to be talking about fertility and some of the key things that you really need to consider as you think about implementing a fertility program. So you can look at you scan that barcode and you can register there. And if, by the way, if you have any questions about any of these webinars, feel free to come by and see us. We're at 1522. The booth, there'll be some range and pasture specialists that'll be working there. They'll be glad to answer your questions. Let's see if I can get this to advance. We have another one on March the 4th from 1 to 2 p.m. on, this is Eastern time, talking about unlocking the potential for white clover, and we're talking about NovaGraze. It's a new herbicide. Andrew's used it actually to preserve annual aspidisa, but it all can be used for white clover preservation, controlling weeds, and preserving those other key forages are extremely important. This particular webinar is going to focus on that, so feel free to catch up with us on that one. Oh, went too fast here. And the very last webinar that we're going to be hosting is actually a brush control webinar where we're going to be talking about a variety of different brush species. We're going to focus on mesquite and a new technology that we have that's called Landvisor. It's a digital solution. It's a solution that helps ensure that you're going to get your ROI out of your investment for brush control. And that one's going to be held for on April the 8th from 12 to 1 Eastern time. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up. I know we have just a couple of minutes, so I'll open it up to some questions from the audience if y'all have any questions for our panelist.
So I really appreciate this panel. I am in extension, but I'm always curious, especially when I have an opportunity to talk to some producers. What was the thing? Forage management is a lot, and it can be a lot for people who consider them animal people because they're plants. But what was the thing that you implemented for forage management on your farm that you saw was super easy, super cost effective, and you saw a huge benefit to your farm?
I guess I would go back to fertility. That's where I think it starts. I don't know if you'd say it's super easy, but doing the grid sampling, having a schedule to do that, to me, that's where it starts with the fertility, and then you're looking at weed control. But fertility is important.
Yeah, just to go off him, and that's what I mentioned doing the grid sample of the co-op. So we actually, they would come out and do our soil samples when they got that technology. I don't know, it's 8 years ago now, maybe. I don't know how long it's been. They actually approached me about the grid sampling, about doing that instead of, because we're like everything, our biggest limiting factor for everybody is time, and it takes time to do the soil samples correct instead of just I'm gonna get 3 or 4 right here in this circle. I'm gonna run over in this corner, actually lay out a pattern and do it right. Sure, it cost me a little bit, but also what it cost me to get them to come out and do it, I actually saved exponentially on my fertilizer costs next year with it. So actually, that was something that I showed them, and they did all of our fertilizing anyway, for the most part. So they were accustomed to the farm, they're accustomed to the pastures. Told them where I wanted it done, and I got out of the way, and then they just provided me with information. So that was very easy for us to do that. Past that, where we are, me and Mr. Kevin particularly, interseeding winter annuals is super easy for us. We've got a great growing season for winter annuals, and our window might be a little smaller than some of the guys even farther south than us, but that was a super easy deal for us to do.
Any additional thoughts from?
I'll take an easy one that hadn't been mentioned is grazing management. Taking those big pastures and whatever you want to do, make them smaller. If you've got one big pasture and if you got some cross fencing, just start by shutting those gates. And have to get out and open gates, but just start rotating cattle, even if it's from 3 different pastures. Or if you got one pasture, get you a little bit of poly wire and split it in half and graze this side a while. And when you get ready, move them to the other side. And it's just amazing what can be done with grazing management. And it's not expensive, and it don't take a lot of time, and it sure is fun.
That brought something. Mr. Kevin said that. So when we get into late March, April, depending on when we can get on some of our winter annuals, we time graze. We have one 10-acre tract that's kind of in the middle of the farm. And so we time graze about 4 different groups of cows on that ryegrass in a day. And sure, the first day or two, you got to push them on grazing and kind of push them off. But when they know, and we'll let them go out there, and we generally start with the younger cattle first. So whoever needs that new fresh regrowth, kind of let them get the ice cream, and then maybe run into little mature cows later. But those first couple days, you have to push them on, push them off. But they get used to it, and then they hear you coming or see you coming. They're already walking to grazing, or they're walking off grazing. So, man, it don't take any time. You can run a lot of cattle through, 10 acres of ryegrass, triticale kind of deal in time graze situation.
Great points. One more question? Well, very good. Well, without any questions, I'll go ahead and close her up. Really appreciate y'all's attendance to our session. Again, if y'all have any questions for the panelists after, I think they'll be glad to answer anything. We are again in the middle of the exhibit hall. 1522 is our booth number. We're here to help, and appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
You guys, thanks so much to Corteva and their guests. Our next session will be here in about 10 to 15 minutes with Halter. Thank you.